The date is May 13th, 2011. My name is Ann Dinney, and I'm interviewing Jim Hutchison for the Maria Rogers Oral History Project at the Carnegie Library for Local History in Boulder. Jim lives at 778 Applewood Drive in Lafayette, Colorado. And today he will be primarily discussing his career as an engineer with the Colorado State Department of Highways, now known as CDOT. Jim, I'd like to get a little background on you. When and where were you born?
In Lafayette, Colorado. I was, where the, what they call the cottage, the place there on South Boulder Road and 2 the old public road. That was the Hood Farm, and I was born there.
What year?
1921,
okay.
January.
Okay. What were your parents' names?
Mother was Hazel Hood, maiden name, and my dad was John Porter Hutchison. He was born in Illinois. I'm
going to spell the name, how you spell your last name, because...
Hutchison.
Okay. What was your father's career?
He was a coal miner up until we went into the Marine Corps. He came out of the Marine Corps disabled and died in 45, so he died young.
We have a photograph of you and your dad here in the Marines. Would you tell me a little bit about that? It's a little unusual to see a father-son combination.
Well, originally when I wanted to join service right after when the war was started, Mother objected to service, so I waited until I was 21. I went down and joined the Marine Corps. Well, Dad had been in the Army during World War I, and he sort of objected a little bit. He thought he was getting the wrong unit. But when I went down to be sworn in, he showed up down there and enlisted the same time I did. So for publicity purpose, they held both of us over for a few days till they could get the newspaper there. It was the first father and son to go in the Marine Corps. And that was in April 42 when we was actually sworn in. And I guess that was an April Fool joke, because April 1st we were both sworn in.
Where did you go after?
We went to San Diego. We spent one night together. He was what they called a retread because he had been in the Army during World War I. He had about 9 weeks of boot camp, and I had 13. So consequently, he got sent to Oakland, and we were separated then until he got, never did know the story really. He'd sign on to these ships to go out as a guard on different ships from the guard unit, and somehow he fell or something. Anyway, put him in the hospital, and then while he was in the hospital, they diagnosed cancer, and they gave him a medical discharge and sent him home. He died in 45.
Had he been involved in, was he a mine superintendent, or was he a miner?
He was, I'd say, just a miner.
Where?
He had other, many different jobs during his mining career. He was working at the highway mine here in Boulder County when the Monarch mine blew up. And after they started the mine, he went to work at the Monarch. And while he was working the Monarch, he got his back broke. So this was the amazing part. He got out of the hospital recuperated well enough that he went in the Marine Corps passed physical to go in for the Marines when I went in.
Did you ever consider going into mining yourself?
My dad made sure that I didn't. He said, if you ever go to amount to anything, stay out of the mines. And I don't know, I guess it was good advice because mining career would have been pretty short after that.
Mm-hmm. Well, how did you end up in engineering?
I was originally signed up after the war over at CU for electrical engineering and got into some of the courses that I just took a liking to, and I changed over to field engineering, surveying, and anyway, I was signed up over at the university for some of my classes. We went over to my daughter's or niece's birthday party. She was a little kid at the time, and I didn't have anything to do, so I was just sitting there. I told Beth I was going in Denver. She said, "What for?" And I said, "I'm going down and get a job." So I went to work for the highway department. I got on that same day.
I have a picture here of you with a surveying outfit.
Oh, my first job down there was, of course, on the Valley Highway, which was just starting, and we were at 38th and Fox. We had a field office there, and I went to work for them there. And in that photo, I was running a transit. That's the area where we worked. We had a field office there at 38th and Fox, and there was a couple little incidents there. We used to go over to a restaurant that is no longer there. It was torn out later. We'd go over there for coffee. They raised the price to $0.10. We quit going.
In this picture, there's a huge clover leaf where you say Fox, and I'm trying to just kind of imagine where that clover.
Fox is this one that runs off to the side on the upper part of the clover leaf.
Okay.
There's a bridge over that they were building there at Fox Street at the time. It's the overpass of the highway itself. Went through, and then the clover leaf was added.
What's the year on this picture, do you suppose?
That would be, well, I got the picture while I was still working down there, so it would have been probably 50. I would say about 50.
Was it called the Valley Highway Project at that time?
Right. And they were, at that time, they were moving some of the houses out. They had to remove whole areas to be able to build this through there. So there's a lot of the people, their homes were taken out. Most of them were paid for by the department, then sold and moved. One particular one down there just on the edge of one of these clover leaves, his house fronted on the original street, and what they did, they come up and raised it, turned it around and faced it to the street on the other side. And he's kept the same house in the same location.
If this was taken in 1950s, how many years had gone on just buying up properties?
I don't know exactly when they first started on that. There was, it was pretty much just getting started on the construction when I went to work for them, because we were doing a lot of the surveying for the road work and for the bridges. And
where did you pick up your surveying skills? In at CU?
I had Dr. Rottenstrauss as an instructor. He was my counselor when I first started over there, and I had him for an instructor for my surveying. So I did have college surveying when I went to work down there.
Is that one reason you got the job so quickly?
Primarily, yes.
Did you see this project through to the end?
Well, when I was a little skeptical about going to work for them, I said, well, how long do you think this will last? I said, well, approximately 10 years probably. Well, you and I know now that they're still working on it. It never has been completed. So where it'll end, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, when did you move on to another project?
Well, I was with the field crew at that time. Then I got a promotion and moved over to traffic engineering, and I was draftsman with them until I decided to leave the department. And I worked with them probably a little over a year as a draftsman.
Okay, so you left the department.
I left the department because they have a system of examinations, and I was top of the list for promotion, and there was a job opening out east, eastern part of the state. So I agreed to take the transfer, but they wouldn't release me from traffic. So I said, in that case, I'll quit. And I did. I gave them a 10-day notice and come out to Lafayette and stopped for gas. The guy had a sign in the window that he's wanting to sell. So we agreed on terms, and I bought the station. So I left the department, and I was gone until when I went back to the department. It was after I'd spent time with Cambridge Corporation and some other incidental work. And then 1954, I decided that, well, Cambridge was being shut down essentially in the Boulder area. So I decided I'd go back to work for the highway.
Well, let me just ask you a question on this photograph of your filling station. Where was it located?
That was on the corner of, at that time, 287 and Baseline.
Okay.
It's on Public Road, you know, right on the intersection there on the south. It's actually on southwest corner of that intersection.
What was the name of your station?
It's Conoco.
Okay.
It actually belonged to the Continental Oil Company. I had a lease on it.
Okay. And what is this Cambridge Corporation you mentioned?
They were, well, I guess it's not classified anymore, but we were working with the H-bomb, and we were located up by NCAR there in Boulder, and we were doing cryogenic work, you know, liquefying hydrogen is what we were using for our tests and stuff. And then in '54, we had the bomb tests over in the islands, and that's when the Japanese fishermen got caught in the fallout. There was a lot of talk about that. And after we come back home, I was going to be transferred to Albuquerque, or White Sands actually, for in charge of operations down there. And supposed to leave that weekend, and I got a phone call, said, don't leave, come on over Monday morning, we got discussion. Went over and they said they had canceled our contracts. So we no longer had a contract with the government. And a lot of us were going to be laid off. They brought in people to interview us from different areas, Redstone and various other departments. And I went in, I said, I don't have any problem. I said, I live here. I said, rather than keep me around to help close stuff up, I said, I'll leave. So I resigned from that, primarily because there was other people who needed the work. I come in, I applied for work with the highway department, went to work in Boulder.
What projects did you have going on there?
Well, my first project with the highway department as a project engineer, incidentally, the promotion that I didn't get when I had retired or quit was what they hired me in for in Boulder. So just it took a couple years off in between. But anyway, I had the job from, essentially Boulder Creek area to Broomfield on 287 when we did the widening and paving on it. And then my second project, and I used to be, at that time you could count a project by years. I went to work over in the Marshall Road, going out going out Broadway to Marshall, and building the bridge over there in Marshall, Timber Bridge. And then after that, let's see, I guess the next project I would have been on would have been Canyon Boulevard. And at that time, they started multiplying. I not only had one job, I'd have two jobs, sometimes three projects going at the same time. And I just have to oversee those three.
What was going on Canyon?
On Canyon, It was known at that time as Water Street. And we started at the west end and come down to 28th Street on Canyon Boulevard. Built that, took the railroad out, and it used to go, of course, right in front of the train depot. The depot was moved later, but there was a lot of what would I say? A lot of things had to be moved to do Canyon Boulevard as we know it now. And essentially, it's stayed the same since then.
Well, besides removing the railroad tracks, what else were you widening?
Well, there was, up on the west end, there was the old railroad depot, one of the originals, and then there was a mill, a wood mill up there. I can't recall just what all was there, but there was a lot of the work was on the west end, getting that located before we could actually come down onto the streets. But then when we come on to Canyon Boulevard, as we know it now, it, well, we've got the, some of the newer buildings have been built along there. A lot of the old homes are still there, though.
Now, this was a state highway then?
That was state highway work.
Mm-hmm. Well, the fact that you were removing some major buildings at the west end, was the city of Boulder involved in what came down?
We worked with the city of Boulder pretty close the entire time I was working out of Boulder. We had projects that where there was federal funding for city projects, like on Arapahoe, for example, that don't fit because, say, on Baseline, some of those streets we actually did the work, but it was federal funding and the state had to be involved. So we did the monitoring, we did a lot of the work on it, but it was in coordination with the city of Boulder.
Was that a good relationship you had with the city, or was there difficulty working together?
I'm hesitant to make a statement, but I guess it's one that probably indicates what was going on a lot with the city. We had a little discussion because our work, we wanted quality work, controlled. We kept pretty tight control on the contract work. The city of Boulder, price is no concern. It's a different attitude. And there was a little bit of, I won't say friction. I mean, we got along fine. We did a lot of work with the city. And then, of course, after I retired, I did a lot of consulting work with the city.
Oh, you did?
I did. In my consulting time of about 10 years, they didn't give me time to do much else. They kept me busy on different projects. But like I say, the after that year with Canyon Boulevard, we had different projects scattered all over Longmont. I was out at Wiggins. We was on the interstate. It's okay. One of the projects was did we decide that was on 47th?
It says this. You got a third place award for this. The State Department of Highways got us an award on this for 47th and Sioux Drive.
Okay, that was the overpass, pedestrian overpass, and it was you see several of them now, but that was the first that had the cocoon or the screening over top of it like that. It sort of cushioned it. It fit in with the atmosphere of the area, backdrops of flat irons and stuff. In fact, later on we had a project where they did another bridge similar to this, and so what? It was just common again.
What year was this award?
Oh boy, that must have been about, I don't know if I've got that down any place.
Well,
that's
1954 you went to work for Boulder.
Right. It must be it'd be one of the later projects. It must be closer in the 70s.
Okay. Well, this was designed by the department.
It was, they gave credit to somebody else as a designer, but it did have to come through the department. And actually all we did was supervise the building of it. I mean, the design was already made and printed when it come to us.
How long would it take to put something like that up?
There was probably, I would guess that there'd be, in the design department, probably close to a year's work. And then we had, in building, besides doing the road work, we built the bridge. And that was probably, maybe 4 or 5 months.
You also worked on the Diagonal Highway?
We sort of broke that one in. It was, prior to that, the roads followed the section corners, made diagonal, just you go a mile one way and you have to go a mile east, then a mile north. And we cut through and made the, kind of followed the railroad up there and did the diagonal from Boulder to Longmont. And so we built that complete.
How long was that under construction?
Well, we were probably a year on the original, and then, of course, we were back doing other work later. I was overlaid part of that just within the last couple of years before I retired.
Well, you built one lane and then it was later that you built the other lane?
Actually, we built one lane through and then come back and built the other one, but they were done primarily at the same time.
I'd understood there was some controversy on where you would intersect in Longmont to Highway 287.
There was a couple different ones, what they call Pike Road now. There was a discussion that we would turn and go down that road to 287. It didn't come about. We did the survey on it, and we built the intersection there at as it is now. We did that right with the same construction as the diagonal. So that intersection was the one that won out.
And why did it win out?
I'm going to say part of it's politics, but part of it is just to make a better connection going north. You know, it's even as it is today, it's a pretty wild intersection. It's sometimes pretty tricky going through there.
Yeah.
And of course, they always, one of the things when I was working on that part of it, I had a field office, and construction jobs, they furnished, they furnished, we paid for it, but you had a field office, which was just a trailer for an office, and another trailer for materials testers. And on that particular job, they didn't have any of their regular field offices available, and they got approval. I had to go up and look at the trailer to see if I would approve it. I said, I don't need all this room. I said, why don't we put the engineers and the construction in the same building? So we had a house trailer that moved in on that corner as a field office. I had, my part was red carpeting, even on the wall. And he took a lot of ridicule about it, kidding about it. Well, as it turned out, I mean, it worked out good for both of us, because their man, the engineers, and our tester had his lab right there too. So with the construction being able to use that same office, we were right together. We could coordinate our work easy.
And that was at the corner of the diagonal and 287?
Right. Well, no, not 287. It'd be at 95th.
Oh, okay. Okay. What's this tester testing?
Well, on the testing, besides the report writing, anything we had that come in, pipe, had to be recorded, tested. Dirt work, they took densities, they go out and take tests, make sure the compaction was good. Gravel had to be a certain grade, and that was all up to the tester to keep track of that. He'd pick up samples that he'd test himself, and every so often they had to send a sample into Denver, have the Denver lab check it. And then with the asphalt, which most of that was all paved with asphalt, they had their testing. They'd go out and check the density, make sure it was compacted right. Testing was, I think, one of the primary reasons that we had good highways. Our testers were good.
Now, if anything quality-wise went wrong, did the buck stop with you?
Essentially, yes. It wouldn't exactly stop if I did something wrong, and I can't think of any place that we had this happen, but for example, the design work that come out of Denver, we had one of our bridges over there in Boulder that we started work on it. Glenn Jensen and I were working together, and he said, "This isn't going to work." So we checked, and sure enough, they had missed putting a width on there. There was a error on the construction plans. So we caught it. We gave our documentation to the Denver design group. They redesigned that to take care of it. And so essentially it ends with us, but there's always places you can go to get help.
Yeah. As you come south on 287 from Longmont, when you get to Arapahoe, there are some stone pillars at that intersection.
Those stone pillars was put up there as a memorial from World War I. The Legion and the Lyons Club from Boulder actually got those up to start with. Well, there'd been some vandalism on them, and there was talk about tearing them down. And I'm primarily a historian too, I guess. I got involved with correspondence on that to save those. So they decided we did a survey out there, checked the area, checked the compaction, foundation work, so that we could move the north one. Figured we could move it north. And it just happened the day that I drove out from Boulder to sort of check on them. I was check on it and then come on home. I got out there just about in time to see that north one topple. And the foreman on the contractor, there's that damn hutch. And we were friends, but he thought he was in deep trouble. Well, as it turned out, they took the same stones and rebuilt the foundation where it sits today. And at the same time, they refurbished the one on the south. So those were both done by the contractor. We weren't involved in the cost of that for the rebuilding, because they figured they were the ones that did it.
Now this was because they were moved because of a widening highway.
They were widening. The road at that time used to come into the intersection, and there was a sort of an island. It was a Y there, and you go north or south onto the 287, and in that island they had a concrete built-up island. They had a cannon and a flagpole with a flag there, and this was being taken out and the road built as it is still presently the same way as the new construction at that time. But it meant widening the area between the two pillars. And I don't recall the distance. It was something like 12 feet, I think, that we moved that.
What year was this?
That would have been must have been 82. It was just the time I was retiring.
Mm-hmm. Now, this business of taking the original stones and rebuilding, they did that again down, continuing down 287 to Baseline with the Blue Star Memorial.
The Blue Star Memorial originally in Lafayette was at the corner of Baseline and 287. There was a curve, and they had a fireplace. Well, the fireplace there was a lot of people stopped, tourists would stop there and cook their meals. I was with scouting for many years. We used to take the scouts out there and do cookouts at that fireplace. Mm. And somehow the back houses, they had two toilets out there. Somebody had burned them, and they opted not to rebuild them because it was hazardous. So much more traffic had developed that it was kind of hazardous to have people stopping there. So somebody stole a plaque off of the fireplace, and later on, I was already retired. The contractor working on that area when they was going to do 287, as it is now, building the new road, they were going to tear out the fireplace. I said, fine, you could tear it out, but you're going to rebuild it. And there was a little correspondence that I had with the city of Boulder and the contractor. And they didn't build a fireplace. They built the one that is there on 287 now to replace it as a part of the Blue Star Highway. And the Blue Star Highway, incidentally, was a memorial for military, for past, future, and present. And I worked, of course, I was with the VFW here in Lafayette. Frank McElwain and his brother was ones that actually, they got involved with it and did the rebuilding. So they built the one that, as it is now. And
what did the garden club have to, the Federation of Garden Clubs have to do with that?
Just a second, I'm trying to think of the gal's name. That one here in Lafayette, though, that was, she's influential in getting the, not only here, but Broomfield, out east, you know, a lot of the different places that she got the Blue Star memorials put up. But anyway, she was, lived here in Lafayette, and she was one of the, I'm going to say honchos, she was one of the leaders of that garden club at that time.
If you think of her name later, we can put it in to the transcript. That was once, the Lincoln Highway came down that far. Is that correct, or it came down to Denver briefly?
I hate to be quoted on this one because no, it really didn't. The Lincoln Highway, of course, was east and west. Mm-hmm. They wanted to make the link from actually up by the Greeley area, come down the Platte into Denver, and then back north to Cheyenne. Well, as it turned out, we got the link coming down from Cheyenne to Boulder, or to Denver, that it got a designation as Lincoln Highway. In reality, that's all it was a link between the two. But as it comes through Lafayette, I recall when we went back to Illinois when I was just a baby. And every year we'd come out, Mother and I'd come out and see Grandpa and Grandma. So we were out here in 25, and that was the last, that's why I can pin it down so close. That was the last year that we were come out to visit until we come out to stay again. Mm-hmm. And I can recall, as a kid, I would have been, 4 years old. I can recall hanging on the fence there at Grandma's watching the machines work. And these big construction rollers that worked there. I kind of admired them and watched them. After I got into this historic part, many years later, here comes up the picture. The same equipment that I watched. I've got a picture of it working on the Lincoln Highway, or on that link of the road in 1925.
That's truly amazing. Let's see. You had said something about, were you involved with the department with the Big Thompson flood?
Yes. I was working in Boulder at the time, and most of our crew went up to the Thompson Creek. Even our resident engineer was up there a big part of the time. Well, it left that whatever work was done in Boulder or in our office, I was the key personnel here. But I still had to go up. I went up to the Thompson several times, but I never stayed up there to work. I was over on the St. Vrain. And was kind of an interesting thing. There was a lot of damage there too, and there was a car that was lost, and in the flood there. It was washed off to the side. They couldn't find it. They found one person. There was two in the car. They found the body of one further down the stream a ways. The other one was never located. Oh. Even to this day, they've never located him. So maybe someday the scouring of the creek here, maybe it will. But
was
anyway,
that the north or the south St. Vrain?
Huh?
Was it the north?
North St. Vrain. And this car that was lost, we had guys out from Greeley that come out with the metal detectors trying to find out where the car was, because it was, you know, completely covered somewhere and nobody knew where. And just as a last resort, you've heard of this witching deal with, I used the welding rods, you know, bent, and I went out with the rods, and they couldn't find that car with the metal detectors, but I located it with those rods. And I asked the fellow on the loader, or on the backhoe, I said, try digging right here. And the first scoop, he come up, hit one of their tires. So my wires did better than the detectors. But anyway, we assumed that the reason the detector didn't get it, it was upside down, and the first thing we hit when I started digging where I told them to was the tires. The car was upside down. It was probably too far away for the detector to pick it up. But anyway, we got the car out, but it wasn't pretty.
No, I'm sure it wasn't. So you retired in 1982, and, well, wait a minute. I've got this that I forgot to put up here.
Oh.
Can we talk about that?
Well, we've all heard about the Cold War. This was during that period of time. They were anticipating, or not really anticipating, they were trying to protect or be aware if we had a nuclear attack. And we had a team in Boulder from where I was with the team out of our office that we were assigned these nuclear detectors, and we'd go out. We had some tests, we had some trials, you know, just to keep us on our toes, just to go out and make sure that they were everything was working. And the main thing was to be able to alert people and be able to clear out an area if it was in case of an attack. We had the nuclear test equipment that we were using, assigned to the department.
Why was Boulder chosen to have this type of a service?
I think probably our biggest reason for here, we had Rocky Flats, of course, and it was a primary target, let's say. And I think that's probably one of them, but then it's a fairly heavy populated area, and we were if there had been anything, we would individually we wouldn't have even gone home. We would just grab our equipment. We were on the job right there, and that's why the highway department was picked.
Well, how long did this monitoring go on?
I was with it probably, it sort of died down. They still had the equipment, but I'd say probably 4 or 5 years.
Okay. Well, now to get back to what I was starting to say, you retired in 1982, and you had some rather heartfelt cards and awards at your retirement. I've put up the card that you were given.
I might, this card here was just one that they gave to each employee that was retired, and the ones that wanted to had their opportunity to sign it. And I guess I'm looking at it today, brought tears at because some of the touching comments about I learned more from you than anybody else in this place, or thanks for giving me the chance, and that sort of thing.
Well, that is very meaningful.
I might add that on that retirement, Flatiron Paving was present because I'd worked with him in many different jobs. And Wayne Saylor come over to the department, presented me with one of their red Flatiron hats, put me on the payroll. He said, I've been wanting to do this for the last 20 years. He fired me. So that was my reception with Flatiron Paving. And he just done it as a sort of a stunt. Everybody knew him, but
well, they also gave you a very nice plaque from the department. And I presume that hangs in your office.
I have this hanging in the office in here. Mm-hmm. Then after I retired from here, of course, I did about a little over 10 years of consulting work. And that's when I worked, well, the city of Boulder kept me busy most of the time. I did some little jobs, but with contractors and stuff, but I did most of my work with the city of Boulder as a consultant manager, project manager. Mm-hmm. Did the biggest project with them was the 17th Street Bridge, and I don't have any pictures of that's where the bridge was first starting.
Okay,
I don't have a final picture of it. I think I do, but they're probably in slides.
Okay.
But that was when we first started, and you can see in the background is Mackey Auditorium. I think it's Mackey, isn't it? And then the other main project was up on North Broadway. Did that wall at the north end of Broadway, just outside the city limits, up past the hospital there.
Was that up where the arch used to be over the highway?
The arch actually was a little bit closer into town from where the wall was built. Mm-hmm. But that's also another project, was building that highway north of town, from there to Lyons. And there's just very few places in Boulder County that I didn't work on it. We did a lot of work in Longmont, did various streets. We did the paving up at Estes Park, up Boulder Canyon. We've, I don't know, that was all part of the highway work. My consulting work, I did some with the county. My last project, I was in Scotland when they started the project out here on Dillon Road. I was supposed to take charge of it, and I said, well, I'm going to be gone. So they waited. They got started, but then when I come back about a week later, I went to work. I said, this is it. I quit. I said, when this job's over, I said, I'm through. I said, I've worked too many years.
And what year was that?
That would have been 82, about 89.
And then you got involved with...
about 10, I was about 10 years. It must have been 90, 91.
And you got involved in all of your historical work here in town.
Yeah, I was involved with it also at the same time, but it was kind of strange. Engineer for, well, not only my 30 years with the highway, another 10 years after that, 40 years. As an engineer, I turned out to be a historian. That's what they call me. They don't call me an engineer.
Well, whatever label you have, it's been important work, and I really thank you for sharing all of this with us, Jim.
Well, there's a lot of stories probably could be told that we haven't even alluded to. But
well, if you feel like a second interview sometime, let me know.
Like I say, it was, as it turned out, with the years that I've lived, turned out it was a small part of my life, really.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.